Hello, VoiceThread class. I will be reviewing quickly the CLA reflection prompt so that way you know how to focus your peer review. So the most prevalent issues that students had in the class this morning was with these four things. Learning experiences, activities, and assignments needed more context. Connections between the CLA major and goals could be personal or professional goals, needed further elaboration. The most common issue this morning was the further clarification of specific concepts, theories, skills. And so people were just speaking generically about a course they took and didn't go into depth more specifically about what was learned. And then lack of introduction. So I think only one student didn't have like an actual conclusion, like the writing just stopped. So let's take a look at some quick examples. So in Meredith's paper, you can find this in the folder. She started hers with like an origin story of like why she picked the minor. It's not necessary, but everyone tends to do it. So if you have an origin story, just a sentence or two is more than enough. The main goal is to get to the point in terms of what about this minor do you think about your major and professional goals. Like that's the main objective. And so spending like a third of your writing for something that is not even needed and that faculty are just going to skip over anyways. And so you have to think about your audience. Like we read hundreds of these. And so, we're looking for that moment when you start to actually talk about what's important. So you don't really want people just to skip over your writing. So it's a sentence or two is fine. And then you can get into specifically what about that, the courses you took or activities you did. And she talks about having taken these history classes about brothers of Estonia, Latvia, and so forth. But she doesn't talk about like how this applies to her thinking today. She just, indicated in a general way how she learned about complex political social pressures. I'm like, well, how does that relate to complex political social pressures of today? What pressures are you referring to of today, right? So how does this relate? And then she talks about learning to be an independent scholar. So what does that mean to her? And she talks about these research skills, but what research skills? So if your writing sounds like just a summary of the course catalog of like what you will learn in this class, then you're not being specific enough, okay? So that's really important, is that you get more concrete. And then she did a good job with like concluding it and talking about how it ties, to her goals. And then Tally here had kind of an opposite problem. She did a great job with going into specificity about Karl Marx and looking at materialism. And so she really explains that. And then she goes into tying it to her environmental studies minor and then talks about her experiences like living out in the swamp and hiking and, learning how to build a fire and things like that. And tying it back to kind of providing examples of how it relates to Karl Marx and materialism. And in her case, she just stopped, like she just ran out of gas, so she didn't have a concluding paragraph. So that's kind of what's missing for her. But for the most part, everybody had this issue with not being specific enough, and the writing sounded more just like a course catalog. Okay, so it's important that you are able to identify that in your own writing. You're like, oh, yeah, I did the same thing. And to help each other identify it in each other's drafts so you guys could learn from each other. Okay, so come on to VoiceThread. The essays, the drafts will be there. And hit the plus sign, turn on the audio, and use the pencil down here to point out specific parts, any particular words, and then leave your audio comments. All right, so the revision of this will be due December 16th, next Wednesday. And so you need to complete your peer review of this by Friday anytime. So you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to complete this. This weekend, I will be reviewing the CLA drafts. So you guys go first, I go next. And then I'll also be leaving my feedback on your capstone essays. And so you'll need to revise both for the December 16th deadline. All right, so I look forward to hearing your reviews.